The Galactic Council of Orin had survived 3 supernova collapses, 2 interdimensional border disputes, and 1 very unfortunate potluck incident involving the Volgari ambassador and a dish labeled harmless. They had witnessed civilizations rise. They had watched civilizations fall. They had filed the appropriate documentation for both. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared them for the humans. Counselor Threxval of the Ashen Collective sat at his desk on the 73rd floor of the Grand Assembly Tower, staring at a document so thick it seemed to possess its own gravitational pull. He had been staring at it for 47 minutes. His 4 eyes were drying at different rates, which he found deeply inconvenient. "Delegate Worm," he said calmly to his assistant. Fricks, who was called Delegate Worm only during formal sessions and not in private, shuffled into the office holding a warm cup of Zen tea and wearing an expression of profound regret. "Is this real?" Threxval asked, gesturing at the document. Fricks placed the tea on the desk. "Yes, Counselor. All 412 pages. 417, sir." The addendum was filed separately, then amended, and then the amendment was appealed. Threxval pressed 2 of his hands against his face. "By whom?" "By a human. Mr. Darvo Plin. He works in the Alliance Interplanetary Transit Office, Subdepartment 12, Tier C, Non-Biological Cargo, Subsection 4. Subsection 4, Threxval repeated slowly. "And what exactly is Mr. Plin contesting?" Fricks opened the first page of the document with the careful reverence of someone opening a bomb that had strong opinions. "He is contesting the unauthorized rerouting of 17 shipping containers through the Praxis Corridor without Form GC 119, Form GC 119 revised, and the Supplementary Declaration of Goods in Transit. He states, and I quote, that these forms have been mandatory since the Second Orin Compact of 2241, a compact that the Ashen Collective signed, ratified, and apparently forgot about." Silence followed. A very specific kind of silence, the kind that has weight and texture. "We signed that compact," Threxval said. "You did, sir. 43 years ago. 47, actually. He mentions that too. On page 209, with footnotes." Threxval looked at the document again, then at Fricks, then at the window. Outside, the assembly tower pulsed with the activity of 400 civilizations managing the politics of an entire galaxy. There were species with warships the size of moons, species with telepathic combat forces, species that could dissolve solid matter with a thought. And a single human from Subdepartment 12 had placed the entire Ashen trade route on hold because of a missing form. "Can we simply," Threxval began, "ignore it?" "No, sir. He has already copied the Compliance Bureau, the Office of Interplanetary Standards, and something called the Human Rights and Trade Fairness Advocacy Network. That organization has 42,000 registered members and a very active newsletter." Threxval leaned back in his chair. The chair groaned under the philosophical weight of his situation. He had negotiated with the Kethra, who communicated through controlled aggression. He had negotiated with the VRYN Dominion, who considered eye contact a declaration of war. He had once spent 6 hours inside a pressure-sealed chamber with a species that reproduced through argument. None of it had made him feel this helpless. Because the Kethra you could see coming. The VRYN you could prepare for. But this, a single quiet human with a desk lamp and a working knowledge of compacts that others had forgotten they signed. This was something else entirely. "Retrieve the original compact," Threxval said quietly. "Already done, sir. We are, in fact, in violation on 6 counts." 6. He found 5. "I discovered the 6th while reviewing his work. I thought you should know." Threxval stood slowly and walked to the window. Below him, the city of Orin Prime shimmered under the pale light of 3 moons. Somewhere down there, in a modest transit office with flickering fluorescent lights and a coffee machine that never worked properly, Darvo Plin sat at a desk, calm as still water, filling out another form. Not angry, not threatening, not armed with anything more dangerous than a procedural manual and the patience of someone who had clearly read every single page. Threxval pressed his forehead against the glass. "Contact Mr. Plynn," he said. "Tell him we are willing to discuss a resolution." Fritz was already typing. "He anticipated that, sir. He has prepared a proposed settlement framework. It is 60 pages long." Threxval closed all four of his eyes. The galaxy's most dangerous species did not conquer through fire. They buried you inside your own fine print. The meeting was scheduled for 9 in the morning, Orin Standard Time. Darvo Plynn arrived at 8:53. He carried a folder. The folder had tabs. Color-coded tabs. 17 of them. Threxval had not slept. The conference room on the 51st floor of the Assembly Tower had hosted peace treaties between warring empires. It had witnessed the signing of the Galactic Non-Aggression Pact of 2289, an event so tense that 3 delegates fainted and 1 spontaneously molted. The room was built for gravity, ceremony, and historic moments that would later be painted on institutional walls. Darvo Plynn entered, shook hands with everyone, complimented the view, asked whether the coffee was real or synthetic, and sat at the center of the table like a man who had done this many times and found it only mildly pleasant. He was not tall. He was not intimidating. He had brown hair beginning to gray slightly at the temples, reading glasses hanging from a cord around his neck, and the calm energy of someone who packed his own lunch and ate it exactly on schedule every day. Threxval studied him across the table with all 4 eyes. Darvo Plynn smiled politely and opened his folder to tab 1. "Thank you for meeting with me, Counselor," Darvo said. "I understand this was short notice. 47 days notice, technically, since I filed the initial request on the 14th of last month. But I know schedules can be busy." "Yes," Threxval said. "We were occupied. Of course. Shall we begin?" They began. Darvo Plynn did not raise his voice once. He did not strike the table. He did not threaten anyone. Instead, he spoke steadily and politely for 2 hours and 14 minutes, citing documents, referencing clauses, cross-referencing amendments, and occasionally pausing to sip coffee, allowing silence to perform the work that most species reserve for weapons. By tab 7, the Ashen Collective's legal team had stopped whispering. By tab 11, 2 members were quietly updating their professional portfolios onto the table. By tab 15, the senior legal advisor of the Ashen Collective, a being with 60 years of interplanetary legal experience across 9 jurisdictions, leaned toward Threxval and whispered, "We are going to lose." "I know," Threxval whispered back. "On every count." "I know." He brought receipts. "I saw. Physical receipts. Printed. Organized chronologically and by subject." Threxval exhaled slowly through all 3 nostrils. Darvo Plynn, who had clearly heard the conversation but chose to ignore it, turned to tab 16 and placed a single sheet of paper on the table. "This," he said gently, sliding it forward, "is the proposed resolution. It is quite simple. The Ashen Collective will retroactively file the missing transit documentation, pay a standard compliance fee, calculated at the minimum statutory rate, because I am not here to cause hardship, and commit to a review of compact obligations over the next 18 months. I have prepared a suggested review schedule. It is on tab 17. He paused. "I have also identified 4 additional compacts where the Ashen Collective may wish to verify compliance proactively before someone else notices." Nobody in the room moved. A water glass made a small sound in the silence. Threxval looked at the resolution sheet. It was as promised simple. It was also absolute. Every exit had been anticipated. Every counterargument had been addressed. Even the footnotes had footnotes. "Mr. Plynn," Threxval said carefully, "have you considered a career in interplanetary law? I work in transit logistics, counselor. That is what makes this more disturbing." Darvo smiled. It was the patient, unremarkable smile of someone who simply knew the rules better than everyone else in the room and had no need to boast about it. The Ashen Collective signed the resolution 40 minutes later. As Darvo Plynn packed his color-coded folder, thanked everyone again, and asked if he could keep the leftover coffee cups, because the ones in his office were not regulation size, and his request for replacements had been pending since March. Threxval watched him leave and remembered something written by a predecessor long ago. Many species feared humans because of weapons. That was a mistake. Humans did not need to defeat you in battle. They waited patiently until you made a paperwork error. Then they arrived politely with a folder. Threxval closed the conference room door and stood in silence for a long moment. Then he returned to his office, sat down, and began reviewing the 4 remaining compacts. He was not going to make that mistake again.